So, good afternoon, Aotearoa, and good morning to Australia, and afternoon, evening to the rest of the world and the globe out there. And so, we have another Love Speaks conversation and chat, and today's topic is about forgiveness. And how do we go into forgiveness? What brings us to that place to be able to forgive those who may have, tortured, tormented, abused, whatever the issue may have been around them. So welcome, Bev, again to another chat. Always lovely to catch up and join into having a chatty with you.
Running a little late this morning, but she may join us shortly.
Yes, she may do. I'm just going to alter my audience thing on this. But yeah, so forgiveness, Bev.
Yes. Well, it's I don't think we've gone live on your page yet.
Yep. Should be.
Okay.
I think so. I'll just check myself.
Doing that.
Excuse us, everyone, while we do that.
Oh,
yep.
Yep, got it.
Oh, yep, we are.
Now I'm just going to share it to my page.
Beautiful.
Okay. Sometimes these technical things get me a little.
And they do, and they take a little bit of time, don't they, to set up. So yeah. Welcome, Rhonda, and welcome, Lottie. Beautiful. Nice to see you. And yes, so forgiveness, oh my goodness me. And, there's, I sort of put a little bit up about the Amnesty stuff that's going on at the moment too, which I know is grabbing a few in the sense of, am I ready to forgive?
Oh, yes.
So a lot of cafes and businesses that had excluded the unvaxxed through that time of COVID are now putting up Amnesty forgiveness notes on their windows at the businesses to ask us or ask everyone to forgive them. They didn't know that the vaccine didn't work. They didn't know that they were, that what was actually happening and the discrimination that was being created. So I know I had to check myself as well on whether I was wanting to actually forgive, whether I was ready to forgive, I felt. And I know that I have a bit of processing to do around that myself.
Yeah. I sort of, the businesses, especially the small businesses, I feel like they were in a lot of fear. They were in fear and were just complying with, well, in Australia, I talked to one business owner. She said the only way that they knew that they were actually having to mandate people to work there or to come into their shop is through the media. They didn't get any official notification through the government. So it was like the government distanced itself here in Australia. I'm not sure if that was the same in New Zealand, but they distanced themselves from actually saying this is what you have to do. They just channeled it through the media.
Right.
So then people just, their own fear came up. So it's not the businesses that I have the most amount of problem with. I have a problem with like Woolworths and Bunnings and all of the big corporations that were more in the know than, say, the person that owned the veggie shop down the corner, because they were listening to the media. And I want to see some responsibility from the government taken, from those that were in power. I want them to own the shit that they did. They jumped on the board of what everyone was saying and just, I mean, you guys have had Jacinta, who's like the charming player. she knew that it wasn't okay to do what happened. There was
That's
so
right.
much evidence came through that they just totally disregarded. And anyone that had anything to say that wasn't their version of the truth, were we got cut off social media. I don't know
Mhm.
how many times I got banned off social media.
Yeah, me
So
too.
that's the bit that I'm not ready to forgive yet. I
Mm,
actually want to see them come out of denial around what was done.
mm. I know it's an interesting thing. I mean, when I come into my human emotional, I'm
Mhm.
like row. You know, there's still some row, and there's things that I want to say, and that I'll process. But when I'm in my high perception,
Mm.
there's nothing to forgive because everything, and
Yeah,
this is where we swing. We come in and we
we
swing, and we
do,
know that everything is
absolutely.
perfect. It all
Yeah,
planned out perfectly, and whether it was something that was already pre-organized before we even came in. I mean, I know I birthed in for this time, this
yep,
great
yeah.
awakening. I knew that was
So,
why I birthed in,
mm,
but I didn't know how it was going to play out, and that part was the shock. And I think if we have had a little bit of an idea of how it might have played out, we might not have been in such great shock over it all.
but you
But
know what? We were given some indications. We're always
yes,
told to stack food. You know, there was. But did any of us actually take that much notice? I'm sure there's some of you out there did,
yeah,
but
I did.
the majority didn't. You know, it sort of, as soon as it hit, everybody's racing out to plant their garden and do all of those things. But it wasn't until we got right down to the wire
Yeah,
that actually
absolutely, right down to the
the
wire.
wire.
And
Yeah.
I Lottie's just said you snarly Mandy. Yes, I was snarly and I can be. Oh my goodness. And
Yep.
also too, that spiritual thing that we have where it's about, don't go into the fear, and we're all trying to stay out of the fear of it and ride that, and take it into the best place we can. That fear is relevant sometimes. It can be warning signs for us,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
I find a lot of the time, as what we term to be spiritualists and spiritual, is sometimes a bit of a fog. It gets, like it's almost like a what am I trying to say? It's
I
like
know, it's like a bypass, really.
it is a bypass. It's a
Yeah,
false thing that
yeah.
actually we need to be. I feel there's more real in it. We need to be more real.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, because, like my whole thing is that we're grounding heaven here on earth through our physical body, and our
Mm.
physical has all of these emotions.
Yes.
And unless we actually own our own emotions, how, we can't channel it while we're out here. We're channeling it through here. So let's just get in and deal with any of our fear or any of our
Yeah.
abuse or whatever else is going on in the physical, so that we
Yes.
have a clear channel for spirit to anchor through us,
Yeah.
or to
And
anchor the love through,
yeah, for
really.
sure. And we
Mm,
can't do any of that if we're not in our body properly. And a lot of
no,
when there's pain or trauma, and I feel like those 3 years that we've just been playing in, those there, I feel so many people just leapt out of their bodies. They didn't want to know. They weren't here for any more pain. This was creating more pain. It was more pressure, more segregation and separation. It was full on. And now it's
totally.
like, for me, I feel everybody's got to come in and really ground themselves back in, like earth in now, so that we can
Yeah,
actually really start recreating a new world.
yeah,
And
we can't create it from out here.
no, we
We need to
can't.
create it right from our heart.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was interesting because this morning when I pulled the card, I pulled the higher heart
yeah,
template. And it's like really coming from our higher heart, um,
absolutely.
to be able to really, we've got to forgive ourselves as well.
Yep.
Yeah, forgive ourselves for allowing our what's the word? Sometimes I lose my words.
Me too. It's the time we're in. Judgment was
So,
what I needed to forgive myself for, was
well,
judging.
yeah, all the judging, but also just going along. Like I remember saying to my brother once, I said, um, we all know that the politicians are corrupt. So why are we listening to them now? Because it was so easy just to flow along. The politicians are doing their stuff over there, but our life was cruising along,
Yeah.
and suddenly all of that happened. But it's because we let them get away with it for so long.
Mm,
We've
mm,
just let those that are, let's say, the ruling class, the ones that seem to have all the sway over um, the rules that get put in place.
yeah.
And Australia's got more rules than New Zealand, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've just gone, oh yeah, another rule, let's abide by that. And we've just keep abiding by the rules.
Yeah.
So we've become very complacent and just, oh well, that's another rule.
Yeah. And
Mm.
and it's a conflicting thing though. Like I go into that when I come into all of that, I go into battle. And I don't want to be in battle. I'm over battle. I've done that all my lifetimes. Like
Yes.
thousands and hundreds of thousands of them. I'm over it. I'm not there anymore. So for me to engage into any of that, it's really about going back into battle, which, like I say, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and it looks like Claudia might be coming in, so we'll join
Yes.
her in soon. And then I come into the higher perception, I guess, perception again, and I'm floating with it. It's an acceptance of everything. And that there's nothing to battle, there's nothing to forgive, there's just a matter of creating my world.
Yeah.
And it's I sort of think about this in the sense that I sort of see it like, because it's vibrational energy. And so if I was to go and stand and walk into a gang member's, fort, their
Yeah.
threshold, and I went to walk in and I walked into that energy, it's a completely, for me, completely different energy than I am, say.
Yeah.
And so I would feel very uncomfortable. I
Yep.
wouldn't want to be there. And why
Good.
would I want to put myself there and feel those energies that I might have done all my other lifetimes? So this is the same type of thing for me. It's that if I want to engage into it, I'm empowering it for sure. And I'm also giving myself into that, which it's not my stuff anymore. I don't feel like it's of my consciousness. So there's a very fine line where you're walking that in the world of all of that, because yes, those rules still apply to me, but yet I can live with that in a way of freedom for myself in my own being. Do you know what I mean? So for me,
And I do know what you mean, but we don't own a business where people are coming and going. Like I can only talk for what I know.
yeah, yeah,
And I'm looking at going back to where I used to live on the farm and seeing how many rules have been implemented since I left 20 odd years ago. And the amount of paperwork they have to do now. It's
mm,
like quadrupled, and the rules have just got beyond a joke. That's
yeah,
actually what I was thinking about when I spoke.
right,
So
yeah,
it's like, I'm pretty happy in my little world.
yeah,
But when I look out at what other people are going through
mm,
and the way that they've been impacted with rules and regulations, it's just doesn't feel okay.
no, and it's not, and until like I can see that when we stand up and we voice, we bring an energy in that is, yes, opposing, of course, but it's not also just about battle. It's about standing up for self and all those things and putting in boundaries. And I get that. But
Mm,
there's that fine line of where you cross it and you come into battle,
yeah,
and where you sit and you're just complacent. It's a
Yeah.
very, and I fought with
Yeah.
that so much through those 3 years, is stay in your high perception and just be,
And
and
grow.
ride this through and create your thing rather than be in that. But I would always go into this, often I'd get involved in it
Yeah.
because it was so present. Whereas now I feel like there's a bit of a distancing with it. My choice, obviously, because
Mm.
I'm just going over here and doing this rather than that.
Yeah.
But where that's going to get us, I don't know. I mean, we have to, in some way, we've got to create things differently, which for me is not engaging into that. We need to bring something else in and create,
Oh, totally.
and that's
Which is
going to eliminate this stuff here eventually.
yeah, which
Not
is
for
why
everyone.
everything's collapsing.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know how true this is. Maybe I shouldn't even speak it, but I did read this morning that King Charles, I can't even get my head
Yes.
around King Charles, has been accused of uh, homosexuality. Not that I think that's a terrible thing for anyone to
No.
do, but
Yeah.
boy, in the royal family, I think it might be.
Well, they haven't had, well, they probably have, but it's not been mainstream news. you know.
No, no, there is a lot that's not mainstream news, and that is because we've been gagged.
Yes,
There's
we
so
have.
many times that we have been gagged around what is really going on out there. Um,
Yeah.
like all the child abuse. So I just want to come away from COVID for a minute.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
because when I thought about forgiveness, I was really thinking about the forgiveness of our own wounding. Like having been wounded by, uh, for me, it's the sexual abuse that I had. Hello, Claudia.
Hi.
So I
I'm going
had
to
to
fit
think
in around
about
the conversation, so keep going.
Yeah, great.
so I had to think about the sexual abuse that I suffered as a child,
Mhm.
and to be able to forgive that took I had to actually own that that's what really happened to me,
Yes.
and not just go, oh, I forgive my abusers. I
Yeah.
couldn't do that. I actually had to really claim that that's what happened to me.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah,
And and for me, it was realizing too that that person was a catalyst to bring up the healing that needed and required, that my body, my being needed and required, to release the patterning and the program of more of that coming in. So
mm,
I could sit there and go through that processing and eventually, yes, get to, there was only once that I had a real issue around trying to forgive somebody, and that was a heinous crime that this person did to me. But it was with my cat. So that was, I wanted to take a shotgun to the fire and all sorts of things. So, because I was just so angry and I hadn't felt such anger for such a long time.
mm,
And it took a lot for me to forgive this person. But anyway, in the end, we got there. But most of the time, it would be that I could see that this person was playing out. I had asked and requested for them to come in and share this stuff with me so that it would activate healing within for
mm.
myself, as well as them. Obviously, there's stuff they're going to get out of it. But that was what made it easier for me, was seeing them as it was a loving act, not something that was
Uh,
yeah.
sorry, I don't.
No.
I know. Look, and I can go to that place too, but my humanness
Oh,
is
for sure.
I
Yeah.
am enraged by
Yes.
what happened to me as a child,
Yeah.
and I'm allowed to have that. Um,
Absolutely.
in fact, I used to have a punching bag and a baseball bat so that I could actually pin them on the punching bag and just beat the shit out of them.
Yeah.
So for me, when I have finally healed those places, and for me, it was not a short journey. It was actually nothing happened in an instant, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
It was like I really had to get that toxicity out of my body.
Yeah, for
But what I
sure.
found really interesting is that I ran into that person that abused me not that long ago. And he said to me, he goes, "Oh, I feel guilty about that for, every day I feel guilt around that." And I went, "Oh, well, that's a waste of emotion because I forgave you ages ago." So it was like I think having that conversation with him really helped to make sure that it was really released in me. And
Yeah.
hopefully it helped release him from that guilt too, because you don't need to carry that around
Mm.
because that also impacts the physical body. It
Mm,
impacts the fact that he's quite sore and crippled in his being.
yeah.
So yeah, it, I look at putting an affirmation in on top of the wounding for me doesn't work. I
No.
need to get to the wounding, clear that out, and then put the affirmation in, or
Yeah.
fill it with light, or whatever it is that how you process that. Mm.
Absolutely. And I couldn't and I've said this all through, is that it doesn't just go because you might know and understand every part of why this all happened, even myself, and knowing that higher perception thing. But then my human, like you say, had to come through the process. It was what
Yeah,
needed to come through the process and understand it, and allow the release of it, which is, for me, it's about emptying out. So
yeah,
it's actually being able to voice, not to the person, because that often doesn't work, but energetically, and that really works. It empties it out, and you're able to come to that place of forgiveness, and again, that gratitude for that action, even.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree with that. I need to empty it out too. I really need to, like, and I think where I struggle the most, like that emptying outness,
Mm-hmm.
I can empty it out, my anger towards the other person. I can rationalize everything, like the brain can pick it apart and, give reasons to why everything happened. But where I
yeah,
find the hardest um, piece to forgive and empty out is to forgive myself for,
Yeah.
for being in the situation in the first place. Because I kind of tend to claim responsibility too easily for
Mm-hmm.
things. Like I'm like, why did I do that? Why was I there at the time?
It's all my fault. Yeah.
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 Yeah, exactly. Like I tend to
oh yeah,
blame
that's the
myself for
feminine thing,
things.
isn't
Yeah.
And then I have to go through that process of forgiving myself and not making the story because of course I chose it. We all choose the things that we go through in our lives, but getting to this place where I can say, well, I chose it for a reason. Yes, it was painful and it's hurting me, but I did it for myself. I did it to learn and grow.
Mm.
And that is the piece that I find the hardest, is being able to accept that I had to go through the pain
it?
to get the gold.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's really true.
Because the
Mm.
pain is so painful, and it's like, I don't want to do that. It's like my little girl is saying, oh, why did you do that to me?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
I think the way that I've come to it is that, so having been at 6, I'm not sure whether I could blame myself for
No.
putting myself in that position.
No.
But but what it's done for me is that I'm able to sit with anyone that's had really bad abuse. I'm
Mm.
able to sit with them now because, having healed my own, I
Yes.
have that capacity.
Yeah.
And that's actually the way that I can come to terms with it all.
Mm.
The things that have happened to me over my life allow me the empathy
Yeah.
to be able to help others to heal their wounding as well.
Yeah.
Because what comes up for me when you say that, Bev, is you wouldn't have had the deep understanding of the nuances of that pain unless you had been through it yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
And you wouldn't have been able to connect with people on that deep level. They would feel it.
Exactly.
You hadn't,
Yeah.
if you didn't have those real feelings and that real experience in your life, and then you were trying to help people, they would feel the disconnect.
Totally. Yes. I totally agree.
Yeah.
A story, you know, of a woman who was giving birth and screaming, and the midwife saying, "Don't scream, stop screaming." She said, "Have you had children?" She said, "No." Well, then don't tell me to stop screaming.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly that.
Yeah. I think that real life experience is completely underestimated a lot of the time by people, you know, that there are like midwives who haven't had children, doctors who've never lost a family member, or, you know, like that real life experience that puts you in a position of, like, you know, expert understanding of the situation.
Yeah.
Because your body holds the codes for that person to be able to connect to.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think that we overlook it a lot of the time in society, that type of experience, and that, you know, it's really, really special. And I know it's horrible that we have to go through the pain, because that's, you know, that is where I'm at. I'm adverse to pain. I'm really adverse to pain. I don't like it at all. Because, you know, Bev, I was also molested when I was 5. And you say, I don't know if you could really blame yourself as a child for that, but I did. I did.
Yes, I did too, until I'd healed those places.
Yes.
Absolutely, I did.
Now as an adult, and as a mother myself, I look back on my 5-year-old self and I think, oh, you know, how could I have possibly blamed myself? But at 5, my 5-year-old psyche and person and, you know, the little girl inside me didn't know any better. And my mother, I told my mother what had happened. I told her, I came out because I knew that the guy who was doing it to me could possibly be doing it to my sister, which he was, and she's 2 years younger than me. So I felt a responsibility to her to keep her safe, tell. And my mother didn't believe me.
Same story with me.
And she swore me to secrecy, and she said, if you tell your father, he will believe you straight away, and he will kill the guy, and he'll end up in prison, and it'll be your fault.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so I blamed myself.
Of course. And
I accepted the responsibility
go
of
to
it.
prison.
Yeah.
That's a big guilt trip to put on a child who's just been abused.
Huge.
Yeah, huge.
Huge. Yes. And very similar happened with my mum, because my headmaster at school was also abusing me. And I came home and told her, look, once that's broken in you, once you've been abused, it's real. Those that are abusers find that way in. Like,
they do. Yeah.
They do. They just suss it out.
They recognise something in you, don't they?
They do. Anyway, I told Mum what he was doing, and she goes, "Oh, don't be so silly."
Yeah. It was a common reaction. It was a common reaction. So many women that I've spoken to, and men who've had similar experiences. My brother had a similar thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it was common for people to go, oh, the child's just making it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does a child make
we didn't
that
know
up?
any
I
better.
really don't know. I mean, back then we didn't have explicit movies or books telling us any of this stuff. There was nothing.
It was unthinkable.
No, absolutely. And that was more that era, but even today, children aren't believed.
Yeah, even today.
Hard.
So true.
It is.
Yes, because as parents, you don't want to take responsibility for it either, for
No.
not keeping your children safe. So, you
I've
know,
done
we've
something
just been
wrong. Yeah.
round and round in circles. So
Yeah.
it's those of us that are brave enough, and it does take a brave work person to actually go in and remember those places and to heal those places.
Mm.
Because, you know, it's not for the faint-hearted
No.
going in to heal those places. We
It's
actually have
not.
to be quite tough, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Strong,
especially when it's
no strong.
yeah,
Having
and especially
internal
when it's
strength.
being done to children, that innocence, you know, that conversation, that reality, that, you know, the darkness and the innocence that's being tampered with is such a distasteful thing to sort out,
Yeah,
to pay attention to.
yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, it's unthinkable. I can't go there.
Yeah.
I want to know about it. Yeah. Yep.
It's so common and it's become so acceptable in many ways too, you know. It's a shocking thing, but it is what it is. And
Yeah.
again, it's about breaking those cycles and, you know, creating new pathways for our great-grandchildren and grandchildren, really, you know,
Yes. Yes.
so that we can,
Yeah.
you know,
And
bring them into a safer world.
yeah.
Mm.
And you know, when you were saying about going, you know, when somebody hasn't healed their stuff if you go as a client, um, sorry, just lost my train of thought. So I'm just going to be quiet for a minute.
It all just jogs on, and leaves you behind. Oh no. Just, and I've noticed it really again, it's come in a wave again in these last few days, I think. Well, for me anyway. It's like just going blank. I don't know where I am. I was doing a webinar last night and I just kept doing that. I was going blank. Somebody'd have to remind me about where I'm
my
up to.
thoughts back in there over here somewhere.
Yeah.
I think I was
Yeah.
going to talk something about the forgiveness trap, because I sometimes feel like people want to go directly to forgiveness, but you know, anyway, I'm just going to be quiet now for a minute.
Well, you know, it's that same thing, you know, even knowing the issues that you might have, like me knowing and seeing it all playing out in my family and getting why things happened the way they happened, did not remove the trauma from my body. It just didn't do that. So knowing it doesn't just remove it, and just skipping all the details and coming to forgiveness doesn't actually work either. So it's that deep dive in. But what I was going to say is that what I discovered, because I was reluctant to go into any of mine, you know, rapes and bashing, stuff like that. And I didn't want to go back in, because who does? Who wants to go back into something that's so bloody painful that you know, debilitated us back there? So, but what I did discover is that it wasn't as bad. It was still traumatic, but it wasn't as bad as actually going through the experience the first time. So I came to trust that every time I was going to go into something ugly and yucky in those memories and clear, that I started easing myself in a bit easier, because I knew that it wasn't actually going to be as big or as bad as what it was at the time of happening and experiencing it the first time. So that sort of, you know, it was still hard and tough, and, you know, like you say, you need to be a strong person and courageous within soul. And I know soul really is courageous, and it just is calling us in all the time to clear those deep dives. And it's always got your back. It'll hold you and nurture you and support you in it, and all of that. You know, your body wisdom comes in and takes over, and it's worked through beautifully, really.
So it's kind of like giving your body a chance to process the emotion and powerlessness that you were feeling in the moment that it happened.
Yes.
And recalibrating your cells and the feelings that are in your body, and giving your body a chance to say, no, that's not happening here.
Yes.
And forgiving yourself for not having the wherewithal, the maturity, the know-how, whatever it was that you know, you blamed yourself for, or that you felt you were responsible for in that moment of allowing it to happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how I felt. I allowed it, where, you know, I was 5 years old. I didn't
I was
know
just
what
going to
was happening
say,
to
how
me.
could you?
Yeah. But at the time, you know,
Yeah.
I was saying to myself, I allowed it. Somehow I was participant in it. You know, that was how my brain was working. And then when you go back into that moment as an adult, when you're working through the trauma and the pain, giving your body and your heart and your mind that connection, that flow that you have within yourself, a chance to see it for what it really was, and not just from your childhood mind.
Yes. Yeah.
And perspective.
Yeah, because we get stuck back in the
Yes.
child, unless we go back and heal it. I remember this girl said one time when we were doing some deep healing work in a group, and she goes, "Well, I've lived through it. I'm here now. I can now heal it." So it's
Beautiful.
like it can't possibly be as bad to go back and heal it as it was to actually survive it and get to this point.
Yeah.
And if you keep running from it, it's just going to keep chasing you.
Oh, you just get more in. It just brings more in on top
It
of
grows
it. Just
bigger and
like,
bigger.
yeah,
Right.
totally
I think
does.
we're
And
not taught how to say no very easily. You know, that's one of the...
we're not allowed to.
No, exactly.
Yeah, especially when you're
As
children.
children, you're not allowed to say no.
No.
You know, do you want your dinner? No. Oh, well, you're having it. And you're eating everything on that plate. You know? Now, no. Oh, yes, you are. There was no point in saying no. And like that, we weren't allowed. We were, you know, reprimanded for saying no. That was cheeky. You don't disrespect your elders and, you know, all that.
Yes, I have the perfect example of that when I don't remember how old I was, probably about 10 or 11. And my mum was, she cooked every day for us. No matter how hard she worked during the day, she would come home and there would be dinner.
Yep.
But sometimes the dinner wouldn't be very great because she was really not in the mood to cook.
Yep.
But the fact that she had done a full day's work and then came home and cooked, you were going to eat that food. It did not matter if you didn't like it. It didn't matter if it was half cooked. So pink chicken, you know, it didn't matter. You were eating that food because she cooked it. And one day I just said, no more. I'm not doing it. I'm standing up. That's what I thought to myself. I'm not giving in. I'm standing up. I'd had enough. And I just said, I'm not finishing it. Like, I ate what I could on the plate. And then I was like, no, I can't eat anymore. I'm not doing it. And she said, you are eating that food. And there was a battle of wills happening at the table. And I was just like, okay, no, I'm not doing it. I will sit here till 12 o'clock at night. If that's what you want me to do, I will sit here, but I am not eating that food. Anyway, so she sat there with me, right? Because of course she had to be there to make sure I wasn't leaving the table. And we sat there like nose to nose almost. And then finally she was like, I'm not having it. And I'm not sitting here till 12 at night, because she could see I wasn't going to back down.
Yeah.
And she was sitting there with her cup of tea, just freshly made cup of tea, boiling hot, and she threw it on me.
Whoa.
She threw the hot tea on me because I didn't want to eat her food. It was a battle of wills. And she's like, you aren't going to win this. I'm showing you who's boss.
Yeah.
And I, like, you know, I don't even remember what the dinner was, but I remember the hot tea.
Yeah. Wow.
So, you know, that was the message that I got, was that you are not in charge of yourself. I am in charge of you.
Yeah.
And you will do as I say.
Yeah.
And that was a huge message also to my siblings.
Yes.
Of
you know,
course,
because they had
would
to
have.
watch that. They had to
Yeah.
see what was going on. And so they saw, okay, so we can't stand up to mum or we'll get hot tea in the face. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is sad. It's a sad thing that we have to threaten with something horrible to create a fear to get somebody to do what you need them to do or want them to do. Sometimes it's, like Macy going out the gate, it's like you can't go out there. You've got to stay in the yard. That's not where you can go, especially not on your own. You've got to wait for mum or grandma. And then, this one time I said to her, look, what Bobby actually said, somebody might take you away, like you might get taken away and we might never see you again. You can't do that. And she then saw a van outside one day, a few days later, and she said, is that man coming to take me away? And I thought, oh, this is so sad. I don't want her to have that type of fear. But, it's how else do you get it through to them as well? There may be other ways, I don't know. But, it's that sort of thing. We've been brought up to make, to be fearful of things. And yes, some of them are relevant, but in the sense of that's a control aspect with a parent. I mean, there's other ways that could have been done.
Oh,
sure.
100%. But my mum was she was the eldest of three eldest of four children. Yeah. And she was charged with looking after the younger ones because both her parents worked. So she was the boss in the house, and that's how she raised her siblings. Was do as I say or you'll get it, and it was acceptable. It was completely acceptable back then. I remember her chasing me around the kitchen table with a wooden spoon if I was naughty. And it was totally normal. Like my friends have stories like that too, like my girlfriends. And my parents were liberal parents compared to my friends' parents. I was allowed to go out after school. I was allowed to go into the city by myself. None of my friends were allowed to do that as teenagers. Like it was unthinkable for them to go anywhere by themselves, even as teenagers.
Wow.
So I think I see time and the generations and the way we're raised as a bit of a pendulum. So we get treated a certain way as children, and then when we grow up to be parents, we say, okay, I don't want to treat my children that way because it traumatized me. So then we go all the way over to the other side. We try something completely different.
That's what's happened for sure. Yeah.
And then eventually what happens is we'll get to a point where the pendulum is in the middle and the balance is found.
With your psychic abilities, can you tell me when that might happen?
I think it takes generations.
It does, I think.
And I think also the children coming in with new information and the new crystalline, DNA and all of that stuff. That what they accept, the way that they operate as children is different too. So they won't accept certain things from their parents.
They do, and there is that. But I have to say too, there's a lot. I'm just seeing all this too in the last few weeks. There's a lot of bully kids, and they're little kids. Like these kids are toddlers even, and they're already poor Macy. We went to the Gypsy Fair was here on the weekend. We took her down because there was a girl that was at my workshop in Palmerston who was in the Gypsy Fair, and she said, I'm coming to Whangarei at the end of the year. And I thought, oh, come and see you. So that's what we did. And there was a little toddler's bouncy castle. We put Macy in, and she was having a ball. There's a little slide, and you climb up around the other side and you come back down. And there was all these little toddlers, one little boy in there who absolutely was hideous. And he pushed one of the other girls off, and she went crying to mum. Mum's consoling her, and yes, there are some naughty kids out there, blah blah blah, whatever she was saying and all that. Never said anything to the little boy though. Then there was a man standing watching his kids. He had two, I think, and one of them was a little boy. And this boy, the bully. He went and punched this kid, his son, and this boy went off to dad, and he's having a little wah, and dad's like, oh, good boy, you know, it's okay, you know, consoling him. Then Macy, poor Macy, she goes up, she's at the top of the slide. This kid comes over and he actually strangling her. He had his hands around her neck and he was pushing her into the back of the, honestly, it was really bad. And she had fingerprints around her neck and she had fingernail marks in her around here as well. And Bobby was yelling at her like 3 times, oi, oi. You know, the 4th time, that girl was going to go up there and hurl him down. She was just going to get up, pick him up and hurl him. And he stopped. And that wasn't very nice. She said, in fact, that was really nasty. And said to, because by this time Macy had burst into tears. And we got her off there and she just cuddled into Mum. Like, honestly, it was so sad. And no parents, couldn't find his parents. Nobody was around looking after him, looking for him, nothing. He was just paid to get on the you know, and they were his babysitters, basically. Yeah, and I just come away, I keep thinking it's like there's still this program of this violence and this hideousness that's just now coming into these beautiful crystalline children who are still getting programmed into that state. And it's so sad to see, honestly, it really is. And that just instantly, Bobby's, I'm not main schooling her. She's going to be homeschooled. It's too, because Bobby had bullying at school, you know, and I know that's what I grew up with. And it's a pattern for sure, which we thought we'd broken for sure. But obviously, like, this world is full of them. And it comes back to the bigger narrative on the planet as well. You know, we are living with a whole society of bullies.
Yes, definitely. And, you know, what is that poor little kid being raised with?
Exactly.
You know, because, and even if my thing is, sometimes you can have a really, on the surface, look like a great family. And then one kid acts up because they're acting out all the unresolved stuff that's going on in the family as well. It sounds like that little boy is acting out of what he's being,
for sure,
happening to him.
Yes.
And I'm not sure what you do about that. There must be a way. If Bobby had just gone up there and hurled him down the slide and been all ugly to him, that would have been just probably what he gets at home. You know, which to me made me sad when I was walking away. I was thinking, oh my God, that poor kid, he's stuck in this trap now. Because people are going to be almost ugly to him with him carrying out ugly like that, you know? Absolutely.
So
well, that's right. Because you want to just slap him down for hurting my child. But I wonder if you had, just because I've done this a few times with other people, as when I'm not personally involved, of course.
Yes.
As being able to energetically send them a bubble of love so that they can, and the change in behaviour is quite instant. But when you're personally involved, that's my granddaughter over there, you're not going to hurt her. It's more difficult to actually come into that place and send out that love.
Yeah, I was definitely but not him.
If you think about it in that situation, what you were talking about, Mandy, is that there were 2 opportunities before he got to your granddaughter.
Exactly.
For the behaviour to be addressed.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's because nobody did.
She was the 3rd one. That had happened twice before it got to her.
Yeah.
So if one of the adults had said to themselves, this child is wayward, they're doing something that, you know, is hurtful to other children, I'm going to go and talk to this child, and not necessarily chastise them and be like, why are you doing that, you know, and being the scary, you know, pointy adult to the child, but go over to the kid and say, you know, are you okay? What's happening for you? Because they're obviously angry and they're acting out to these children.
Yes.
that you know, and a bully can, it's just like an abuser. A bully can pick their target. They energetically know the children to pick on. And if an adult had just swooped in, you know, at any point before it was escalated to that point with fingernail, you know, marks in the neck, maybe that child could have cried it out or let it out some other way.
Yeah,
and that's where we're missing our village.
Yes,
Having been
totally, absolutely,
having
Bev.
my girls brought up in a small country town, we used to look out for each other's kids. If my kid was doing something, someone would soon go, "Oi, don't do that." That's all that they really needed was, "Oi, stop it."
Yes. Well, that was what this boy, I mean, you know, because that's what we did. Bobby did confront him, and then the guy that was running the bouncy castle said, "What's happened? What's going on?" And I said, "This kid." And then Bobby said, "Yeah, and he hurt that boy, and then he hurt that girl too." And so this guy then took it further and said, talked with this little boy. But up until then, no, nobody had said anything to the kid. He just thought it was all good. I'm all sweet. I can do whatever I like. They're all just crying off to mummy, and that's that type of job.
Yeah, and he probably felt powerful. I did that.
Yes, totally. I was totally that kid.
Look at what I created.
Oh my God. Sorry, it just brought back the fact that I remember doing that to my stepsister. Was a plan to get her to cry. You know? Sorry, it just brought that back to me.
Yeah.
I think I have to forgive myself for that now.
I know. Don't you do some stuff though? We did.
Oh my God!
This kid down
terrible
the drive.
things. As being the eldest child, yep, I certainly did some terrible things. Jesus, shush.
Yeah.
But we're testing the waters, aren't we? We're seeing what we can get away with.
Yes,
that's what we're doing.
That's true.
Because we're creator beings.
Yeah.
And when we're children, you're creating, because you do create as a child, you're creating chaos around you, or you're creating, you know, art, or you're creating
boundaries,
dance, or you through play. So you're experimenting, and you'll experiment with the good things, and you'll experiment with the shadow and the bad things too.
Yes.
Just to see what happens in life and what you can get away with. And if somebody's pissing you off, if your stepsister is pissing you off, you know, you're like, I'm going to get her. I'm going to see how far I can take it.
Oh, I tell you what, back then there was no blended families. It was like his kids and these are ours. It was like that, you know,
us and them.
It was. It was a terrible battle.
Yeah.
And, you know, I could see that he favoured his children.
Yeah.
I don't know about my mum because she's my mum.
Yeah.
But, I definitely could see that. I haven't thought about that for years.
I know.
Favoritism in my house too. There was loads of favoritism in my house as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a hard thing.
It's a tricky thing to negotiate, really, isn't it?
It is. But, you know, I also know how much we as children or people, you know, see things differently. We all see things from where we stand, you know, and I know when my mum was passing and the family all got together, cousins, you know, that sort of thing, and her brother and sisters, and every time something was brought up, Mum would go, "Oh no, that wasn't how it went." And she put into perspective a whole lot of different aspects that they'd all had around certain, you know, experiences that they'd all had. And she was able to clarify things. And I thought then, you know, gosh, they all had this different idea of what one thing had, you know, had happened. And yeah, it was interesting. And I remember thinking then how, you know, I've got an idea about how I was in my childhood and how my brother treated me, and he's got a totally different idea around how he treated me, you know, so it's, we can
Yeah.
only go with what we know for us, and whatever's happening with that person is their stuff. It's often not the same.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
I
we don't
remember saying
see.
to my sister, I think we must have been living in different families, weren't we? Because our
Yeah.
realities were so completely different.
So true, because we don't see all the information at the same time.
No, we
We're not
don't.
seeing the behind the scenes, what's happening for that person behind the scenes. We're not seeing why that person is doing what they're doing. Maybe if we understood a little bit better, we had more information about why that person was behaving the way they were, it would change the narrative for us or change the story in some way.
Yes.
And make us either more understanding or more forgiving or whatever the case may be. But at the time, we're dealing with what we know at the time and how we feel at the time.
Yeah.
And that's why
real.
and that's why things play out the way they do. Like, for example, my daughter was telling me a story last night, unbelievable story, about this group of friends. And one of the girls in the group, who was quite, she's a traveler, so she's not Australian, she's here on holidays, and she's a really sweet girl, and she's quite mentally young and naive and innocent. And she met a boy, and she's really likes this boy that she met, and she was telling the group of friends about this boy and her feelings and how it's all transpired. And it was a beautiful story. And my daughter was saying, like, it was like a love story. It was gorgeous. And knowing this girl the way that she does, she knows her, is that she's quite, you know, because my first reaction was, why is she telling everybody? And Juliet was like, well, no, she's expressing her feelings because she's joyful. She's in joy. She's joyful. Yeah. She wants to share it with everyone. Anyway, there was a boy in the group who went to the potential boyfriend and said, oh, so-and-so was talking about you last night, and she said how boring you are and she doesn't like spending time with you.
Okay.
So this all came out in, like, after the fact. It all came out, all played out, all within 24 hours. So they're all hanging out at this party thing at the night time, and the potential boyfriend isn't paying any attention to the girl, and he's actually giving her the cold shoulder. And so she goes up to him and says, what's going on? Why are you avoiding me? Which I think was, like, so mature of her to do, because she could have just been butthurt about it and gone off into a corner and cried, you know, but she didn't. She faced him. And he said, oh, well, so-and-so told me that you don't like spending time with me. You think I'm boring. And she was shocked, like absolutely gobsmacked, and said, no, I said the opposite. I was telling him that I really like you and I think you're amazing. And then the potential boyfriend was now faced with the decision, do I believe her or do I believe him?
Right, of course.
And so he's now confused. He doesn't know what to believe. She's now crying because she can't understand why someone would do that and interfere in her relationship like that. And I'm thinking to myself, well, obviously the boy who ruined it, I said to Juliet, do you think he likes her? He was trying to separate them. And she's like, no, he's no interest whatsoever. So I'm thinking, well, then he just, the fact that she was so happy and she's so innocent and lovely triggered him. It's like, you know, some people just need to destroy beauty. It's too beautiful. I can't handle it. I've got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Because he can't, I don't know if it's too painful for him to see it in himself, or he just doesn't want to look at that in his life in front of him. So he had to do something to destroy it. But these people exist in the world.
Yes, they do.
These people exist in the world. Like, totally gobsmacked me. Like, I'm thinking to myself, why would somebody do something like that? I don't understand it, but it doesn't mean that it's not there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is the whole narrative right now on the planet.
Yes.
There's so many crazy pockets of stuff that's everywhere at the moment, and we can pull into whatever one we want to if we choose to.
Yes.
And it can be as crazy, and it has been crazy, but
Yes.
yet it is real. And the feelings that we've had in that time have been real and relevant as well.
Yes.
Part of that also needs to be acknowledged, in that how we really feel about everything, really, to be able to dive in and deal with it. And obviously when we do go into it as well, you have insights in there, and there's more to it that you find.
100%. 100%.
It's almost like it isn't about the other people that are involved. It's always just about what you're up to, what you're feeling, and how you know you need to clear it if that's what you need to do, and to do that. And until we unload it and unpack it and go into it, we really, I don't feel anyone can come to any sort of forgiveness over anything until that's happened.
Yeah.
Until we get our own perception on it, and the reality of what it is for us.
Yeah.
And then we can come to forgiveness. And like I said at the beginning of this, is that once we do come into that forgiveness, often there isn't, you sort of see that actually I didn't need to even forgive that person, because I'm in such gratitude that this actually happened, because look how much it's freed me.
Yes, exactly my point. You brought it straight back to where I was going to go with this. And that is, I said to Juliet, actually, he may have done her a favor, because if this boy that she likes can't decide who to believe, when he's the one that spent all that time with her and really likes her for a reason, and he's not believing that she wouldn't say that about him, then maybe it's shown something about his character and where he's at in his growth cycle that maybe doesn't match with her, and maybe it's not the time for them to be together. You know, or maybe it is. I don't know them. But in that chaos, there could have been, there may be a gem of something that is
there will
help her.
Yep.
And then that's something to be grateful for in the whole mess, you know.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And you know, people hear things the way they want to hear them. Exactly. I know I've had people come out of readings. I know exactly what was going on in that reading. Come out, somebody's waiting for them, and then they go, how was it? And this person started telling her all about this reading, and what was coming in was, what I was hearing was like, what? Like it wasn't even what we'd been talking about or anything. She just heard what she wanted to hear.
Yeah.
I was gobsmacked. I couldn't believe it. It was seconds. We'd just done it and walked out, and here she was telling this whole other story. I was like, wow. So, you know, we're all going to take it on the way we take it on. We are going to hear what we want to hear. It's like, it's really all just about us.
Yeah.
And forgiveness is so necessary to love ourselves also. You know, we're talking about shame and guilt over the last few episodes, and all of that also is a big part of what holds us up from loving ourselves. But this forgiveness is definitely, and I know, you know, one of the things that I think I want to say before we go, because we're time's up, but is that when you focus purely on the person and you realize that you're not condoning the behavior of the person, that's a different thing. You know, I never condoned the rapes or bashings, but I could forgive the person or people. So that made that clear up for me. I couldn't, you know, for me to forgive, I was thinking, well, then I'm forgiving the action. It's not that. We're not condoning the action. So it's just about freeing self, because I knew that if I didn't forgive in those processes, that I wasn't going to be free of it. And I had to find a way to do that, was emptying out, saying everything that I wanted to say, screaming, yelling, stomping feet, swearing, taking a shotgun to the bloody campfire if that's all you have to do, you know, and whatever, however it works, but do the forgiveness. Get there somehow.
Get the emptying out happening.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, ladies.
Yes, thank you.
Doesn't it go fast?
Certainly does. I love talking to you two. It's so great.
I love it too. Because there's the three different angles, and we come together in the middle somewhere, eh? But
Yeah.
it's really cool. I like it.
And we do all have, and I like how we can have our own perspective, and you know, we all can come to the same conclusion in the end.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Beautiful.
All right. Well, thank you so much to all the viewers. There's been a few that have logged in there. That's lovely to see. And sharing your thoughts and things in the comments. These ladies will go in as well and add on to your comments. We will. So thank you very, very much. And spread this out. Click in. It'll be on my YouTube channel if you'd like to subscribe to that. That would be really great. And to Beb's and to Claudia's, and just keep spreading the word for us. That would be wonderful. Thank you so much. Take great care and lots of love. Thanks, ladies.
See ya. Bye.